Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for Noise Reporting Challenges and Solutions. I'm Ingrid Boudet, founder of No More Noise Toronto, a grassroots community that is taking a data-centered approach to advocating for a better sounding and healthier city. Now that we've made an impression during the city's noise bylaw review, we're hoping to collaborate with stakeholders, such as the city, to improve processes and outcomes and to show improvements through data. In the webinar today, you will be off camera and on mute. Please feel free to participate in the chat with comments and questions. We will do our best to get to all the questions that were submitted in advance. Thank you for those, for the people that did that. And also questions during the session. I've also used Mentimeter software, and this is how we'll be collecting feedback from you. And I'll walk you through that in a few minutes. The data from the chat and the Mentimeter will be shared with our guests. This is being recorded and will be available on No More Noise Toronto's YouTube channel shortly. So before I introduce our guest, I'd like to make a land and environment acknowledgement. And while many land acknowledgements focus just on the treaties, I would like to take this opportunity to focus literally on the land that colonial activities have changed so much. The health of an environment or ecosystem can be assessed by the sounds coming from it. And all Indigenous peoples did that for centuries and developed a way of listening that we have lost. May we reconcile not only the lines that are drawn on the land, but also the way we interact with the land, working to restore balance and biodiversity and health to our planet. And so with that, it's time to talk about noise. And so noise is defined as unwanted and or harmful sound. And many cities all over the world are wrestling with a new sensitivity to noise. I think many of us during those first couple of months of the pandemic, when it was quiet, we went, oh, wow. And it's actually the earth moved less because we moved less. The Richter scales have shown that. But our cities are also getting louder than ever before, and they're getting more dense. And we have no defense against sound. We can't close our ears and our bodies can't stop listening. So noise is the #2 urban environmental health hazard, according to the World Health Organization, right after air pollution. And we've done a lot more to reduce air pollution. So it's time we reduce noise pollution so that it doesn't become #1. And so with this, I'm very excited to share this ambitious project with you. Gary Yorke, the Executive Director of Customer Service Division, CXD, at the City of Toronto, also known as 311, has some bold plans. I nervously introduced myself to Gary after a No More Noise Toronto campaign landed a number of emails in his inbox about the reporting process. So when I saw him, I walked up to him and I said, hello, Mr. Yorke, my name is Ingrid Boudet, and we sent you emails. And he goes, oh, did you guys send me emails? So I was so very thankful for this, for the great conversation that we had after that. And he actually offered this session. So just very, very grateful for this opportunity. So with that, Gary, if you don't mind introducing yourself and the team supporting you, and maybe also share with us the soundscape that you live with.
Thank you very much. I think that's awesome what you just did. My name is Gary Yorke, and I'm the Executive Director for the Customer Experience Division. And I've been the division head for almost 10 years at the City of Toronto. And with the focus, on passion on 311, and with an understanding that we have to evolve. And the most important thing that we are here at the city are servants. And if we don't create an environment to actually have bi-directional communication and truly hear what the people that we serve want to focus on, then we're not doing our jobs. So from this perspective, I think it's a perfect opportunity to create an environment in which we can share perspectives, insights, thoughts, processes, concerns, and so forth, and then come up with a solution that works for mostly everyone, because not everything fits perfectly for everyone, but it doesn't mean we don't start trying to make it a better place to live in. In terms of my soundscape, I think it's awesome because we talked about this. So I do live in Ajax. I apologize, not directly in Toronto, but I live right beside a school. And I know one time I went to high school, but I never realized all the sounds and things that come out of high schools in evenings, on weekends, so on and so forth. And it does, at some point in time, it is disturbing. Loud music and other sounds that come out, screeching, motorcycles, racing of cars in a high school parking lot. And it could be at 3 o'clock in the morning. It can be 11 o'clock at night. It could be shortly right after school is finished. And I love loud music and things of that nature, but not necessarily at 3 o'clock in the morning. So I do too have sensitivities, and I definitely appreciate the fact that we need to have respect for everyone in the communities. It's not just about living off, the thoughts of the moment or primal needs around racing, so on and so forth, but respecting our environment and respecting people that we coexist with.
Yeah, excellent. You've got a couple team members or one team member on the call with you. Can you give you a little introduction?
Absolutely. I'd like everyone, I'd like to introduce Sarah. Sarah is relatively new to the city and comes with an extensive background in customer service, customer experience, and contact centers. And, she's helping us evolve in our journey to move from 311. And we do a very good job at 311, but we want to do better. And our theme is about moving from good to great. And Sarah is helping us in that journey. And she's a fantastic leader. And I'm very appreciative to have her as part of our team.
Awesome. That's great. Thank you so much to you both. Okay, so I'd like to take a moment to thank the many. I just had to look through the attendees. There are lots of great people who have attended. And so thank you so much for making the time. We've got a number of folks from different city divisions and noise reduction advocates from across the country and also down in the States. And of course, many residents and other interest groups. And that will all benefit from an improved process design. So if you've attended any of my presentations before, I'm going to just replace pin. There we go. So if you've attended any of my presentations before, you know that I like to use Mentimeter. And one of the things that I love about it is that it's an anonymous way of basically providing feedback. So I am going to start by sharing my screen. And Sarah, I made you host. So if you can, let me just see if I can, if you can enable screen sharing for me. I'm sorry, you'll need to go up to the top 3 dots in my name. Sorry, folks, we had a little bit of a, so let me see if I can help with this. So there should be 3 dots.
Yeah. Do you want me to make you the host or?
Yes, please.
Yes.
Okay.
There, I just did it.
Thank you so much. Here we go. We're combining WebEx tech and Zoom tech here. So we're working as we go. Okay, so you should see my screen now. So this is the instructions to Mentimeter. You can scan the QR code with your phone. There's my phone, you can see that. Or you can go to menti.com and type in 4200518. And that will allow you to participate. And so here's the first question that I have. And I asked people this the other day, actually last night, everybody who registered, I sent them an email. And so feel free to join in and see what we have. We've got, there we go, lots of residents, and that's expected. Industry, city council, city staff. Thank you so much for taking the time. Residents associations, others. So I'm always interested in the others. So if you are an other, can you please put what your other is in the chat so that I know what criteria I need to use next time? Okay, so here we go. We've got 29 responses. We got 15, so mostly residents, some others, city staff, 5. Oh, thank you so much for taking time out of your lunch hour for this. This is awesome. Okay, Anna, thank you. Civil society organization. Oh, there we are. TPS. University of Toronto, research on noise experience in the city. Awesome. Lovely. Well, thank you so much for taking the time. So now I'm going to ask you a couple more questions. And this is so that we can understand what noise sources bother you most. And again, if you are an other, please put your other. Hello, Jamie. I just see you in the chat. That's lovely. Thank you for joining. So if you are an other noise source here, please put that in the chat so we can know. Oh, look at this, moving vehicles, eh? That is not a surprise for me. Couple construction, stationary vehicles. Yeah. Amplified music. Oh, here we go. And other is Toronto Air Show. And then we've got another nightclubs, another air show. Okay, great. Amplified sounds picking up there. So now with these questions, the following questions that I ask you, please answer according to this noise source that you have indicated here, because what this means is that for Mentimeter is anonymous, so you will be assigned a number, let's say number 7, and then all of your answers show up all along in different columns in the Excel spreadsheet. So then we can see, according to that noise source, what your answers are. So the next question is, we've had 37 people respond. Thank you so much. Next question, and this Mentimeter will be open, so you can continue answering those questions at your leisure or later on. So how does this noise bother you? It says 60 responses. People are able to enter 3 short phrases. And so here it is, the largest words are the most common: disruptive, annoying, frightening, jarring, unbearable. Yeah, disruptive is pretty much what it is, whether it's day or night. Those noises can disrupt your sleep. They can disrupt your focus. They can disrupt your concentration. Let's disrupt a conversation. I've had that happen. Look at that, 83 responses. Fabulous. Anxiety. Yes. When is it going to happen next, right? Your body gets prepared, that fight or flight. Okay, thank you so much for answering that. Next question. Have you reported this noise source to 311? I can't. Yeah. Yes, 14, no, 17, 18, no's. Okay, we're going to find out why. Okay. Great. All right, that has stabilized now. Well, we're at 19 no's now. Okay. These slides can be shared with everyone when we're all said and done. So if you reported that to 311, how satisfied were you with the outcome? And many of you didn't log the report, and I understand that very well. You maybe tried once, but if it didn't work to your satisfaction, are you going to do it again? And that's why we're here. That's why we're at the table today, to talk about how we can make sure that reports do get logged, and that you're satisfied with those. So this is the baseline here. Okay. So, and then the next question is, so we had 36 responses there. So the next question is, why did you choose that answer? And so here we will go and we'll have a look. There's should be a lot here. So couldn't properly indicate location of the noise source. Case was closed. City emailed me. They took a decision not to deal with stomping in the stairwell, slamming doors. King's air amplified sound. Enforcement. Yes, that's often something where we can have the best bylaws in the world and we can have the best reporting process in the world, but we need enforcement to follow up, and hopefully there'll be follow-up conversations about that. Didn't have the authority to monitor. Acute frustration. Noise affects my health and well-being. Yeah, lots of answers here. Data patterns, interesting. Lack of trust. I assume nothing can be done because it likely requires an expensive long-term solution. I've learned when I have my meetups with people that there's actually, sometimes there is cost associated with solutions, but sometimes they can be creative, and it doesn't need to be so expensive. Education, for example, is one thing that may not cost a whole bunch of money, but might be very effective. So anyways, 311 said there was nothing they could do. The noise tends to pass by and would be gone by the time response happens. I know what that's about. Some of these issues require policy changes. New bylaws. We just went through our bylaw review. Uh-oh, what does that mean? Okay. Noise doesn't fall in one jurisdiction. Yes, and noise does not pay attention to zoning. Noise doesn't stop at a zoning border. So that is something that we need to look at. Okay, great. So I'm going to stop sharing there. Stop share. Okay, so now that we kind of have that as a baseline, and or a current state, I think it's time to hand it over to Gary, and he can tell us about what has tell us about the evolution of 311 to Toronto at your service is. So I'm going to go back to, I'm going to bring up the presentation and make that full screen. And then I'm going to share my screen. And Gary, I should be able to pin you so that you come up and pin. Okay. And I'm going to remove myself. Go right ahead, Gary, all yours.
Thank you very much, Ingrid, and really appreciate the opportunity to really talk about the journey and how we can make things, better together. So in terms of, the customer experience division, it's actually a brand new division that's been created within the city of Toronto, and it was established actually in 2023 of January. Prior to that, we were formerly known as 311 Toronto. And why did we make this change? Well, we'll talk about that. In the next slides, we're going to talk about a couple of things. In the evolution of 301 Toronto to CXD, what our mission and visions are, why we're focused on the customer or citizen experience, hence we're here today, around engagement and communication, the processes and information relating to noise, who to call and when to call, and enhancements and next steps. And I would also really want to take an opportunity to say that this journey together, and you see what the city staff and TPS, they're here together. This isn't just a 311 City of Toronto conversation. It is 301 CXD. It is the City of Toronto MLS and also Toronto Police Services. And we all here understand that we have to improve the way we support our residents. But we have to figure out how we can do it in a meaningful, sustainable way that meets the needs of all the residents in a phased approach. In the next slide, around the evolution. So we were established in 2009 at 301 Toronto, 7x24, 365, easy number to remember, and the most integrated 301 organization within North America. And what that means is once you put something into 311 and a ticket is created, it goes directly into the backend systems of the integrated divisions that we work in, such as MLS. And then what we moved from after establishing was to stabilize and grow. So we increased our customer touch points, equal access to services through channel of choice, really had a multi-channel kind of approach, enterprise solutions, and started to enhance, the closing of the loop with our residents and customers. Then we looked to develop and evolve. And that meant center-led ownership from end-to-end customer services, standards, capabilities, and scaling of platforms. And you saw, or hopefully you were able to see, in service excellence, that it's no longer a conversation of just 311, but it's a conversation of end-to-end delivery. So to see the service requests that are done through MLS and the service delivery and completion and addressing of those particular service requests through wards and across the city of Toronto on a monthly basis and also on a yearly basis. We want to centralize all the tier 0 and tier 1 organizations within the city of Toronto, because I think in the past, we're 44 divisions, but we forget we're one city. And our residents only care about one city. They don't care about the language that we use from a divisional perspective. What they do care about is having the ability to communicate something that they're concerned with and knowing and having confidence that once it goes into the system, it's tracked, resolved, measured, and resolved in a timely fashion in legible languages, not city language. And we're going to move to Toronto at your service, not just division, but one Toronto, no wrong door. And closing the loop, really want to make sure that when you actually communicate with the city of Toronto, yes, through the phone channel or online, and you go through our portal. So for example, if you go to Google and just put 301 Toronto, you go directly into the portal and you're able to create and put service requests in, put pictures in, so on and so forth. And what we want to make sure through our first future enhancements is, let's say you do send a picture, we'll use noise for now, and there's something that's creating an issue that's highly volatile. Well, you create that picture with that service request, you send it in, and that becomes a record. And then we will also, at some point in time, have the ability to send that picture back with that resolution. And we also want to talk about increased stakeholder engagement and governance. Part of our commitment moving forward are to have more conversations like this today. where we communicate, share perspectives. And even though I appreciate that the policy is not where it needs to be, I think we can all agree with that. I think that's a fair statement. But we have to look at what the policy is today. First of all, and part of this opportunity is to talk about clarity around what the policy is, how we actually communicate and track and measure things, and then explore opportunities of where we can make it better. But we have to start with the foundation of how do we enter the city of Toronto or police services today, and what are the deficiencies or good things that we do, and where we can make some improvements. The next slide, please. Our mission and vision. Our mission really is around the new customer service experience division will incorporate a collaborative approach through a structured and matrix manner to drive standards, capabilities, and scaling of platforms citywide. Outcomes will result in increased public access to inclusive, accessible, and integrated services via the channel of choice. That's why we're here today. Our vision is that the City of Toronto will improve the lives of its residents, businesses, and visitors by providing simple, reliable, efficient, equitable, and connected services that anticipate the needs of our residents and customers. And through our objectives, we always have these core principles that drive it. Improve access to city services, provide a consistent customer experience, optimize service delivery in a cost-effective manner, and to continue to build trust and confidence in the city services and people that we provide services to and with. Next slide, please. Now, in terms of accessing the City of Toronto, I love everyone to call the City of Toronto, but not everyone, it's not the most effective channel. Actually, to connect with us through how you're comfortable with. So, for example, when you see these pictures right now on the screen, you'll see that you can connect on your phone or through your laptop by going to just 301 Toronto. And you could actually create a service request, search for a service request, look for maps, and also navigate your knowledge base. And why is that important? The knowledge base really instructs us, if we're not familiar with the city, what services you can utilize through 311, how to create a service request or a complaint or a recommendation, or provide us feedback on things we can do better. So, at 301 Toronto, you can track a service request, find out about city services and programs, or explore the request that you've submitted. And you can also connect via the portal, live chat, the mobile app, social media via Twitter, or X, I should say, or email, fax, or even mail. Now, in terms of modernizing the experience, when you do come to our portal, this is kind of the screen that you see. And what's really important is you can initiate a service request or initiate feedback. And I think what's really important in this particular situation today is we want to hear your voice. We want to have some data around why do people navigate within the City of Toronto and what's working for the residents and what's not. And I saw an interesting comment just now that's saying, why do you have to leave personal information? Well, one of the reasons you have to leave personal information is to protect, actually, even though it sounds odd, but it's protecting our residents. In some cases, when we do things anonymously, we're actually using the system against each other. And we actually use the system to go against another person's human rights. So if you are now going to communicate that there's an infraction, we need to know that you are a real person, you're not a bot. Number two, that you are concerned, and we can also provide feedback in closing the loop to you. In some cases, we legally have to ask for your personal information. In other cases, we don't have to, and we actually extend that. We also want to have the opportunity to track the status of your request. So, for example, instead of calling in, you can go to the portal or use the mobile app, put in your service request number, and you can find the status of what's going on. You're also able to look at requests that are in your neighborhood. You can see the types of requests that are going on, which is really good in terms of data and understanding what's going on in your organizations, your wards, your neighborhoods. And then also finding out information around your city services and programs. On the next slide.
There we go.
No problem. The knowledge base. And why is that important? Well, the knowledge base, what's interesting about the knowledge base is that we have about 3 million interactions a year. from residents, businesses, and visitors searching the content of what's going on in the knowledge base, what's going on in the city of Toronto. And that's over 5,000 records of activities against 600 types of categories of service requests that you can create within the city of Toronto. So there's a plethora of information. Why is it pertinent for this conversation today? It's because let's look at service requests and how to report noises. So noises can be reported toronto.ca/311 or through your mobile app. We can go onto the mobile app, find a service request, create the service request, search for noise. You can also have a link once you search for noise that says noise complaint. Under noise complaints types, there are 7 enforceable noise complaints that exist right now: amplified sound, construction noise, loading and unloading noise, motor vehicle noise, power device noise, stationary source noise, and unreasonable and persistent noise. All those category types, you can create a service request today via 311. You don't have to go to Toronto Police Services. It's not a good use of that source because this is documented, unarticulated, and managed through the MLS environment. So if these types of requests you have or concerns with, you can generate a service request there. If you simply just went to the knowledge base and put this in, you can actually generate a service request from the knowledge base. So it's actually intuitive that way as well. Moving motor vehicle noise and data and insights to guide your future policy and enforcement initiatives. Now, one of the challenges are, and I think a lot of people are passionate about this in particular. Now, it's very realistically, we don't have the capacity, to capture a high-speed vehicle moving at over 100 kilometers an hour, dispatch, find that vehicle, and address it in real time. But we do have processes in place to be a little bit reactive on that, but we know the neighborhood, so on and so forth. We also have spot checks. And I know through some other counselors and some recent motions and activities that happened in the last couple of days or weeks, there's some more emphasis on how we're going to address this. Mm-hmm. We know that new noise types are also going to be added as of Q2 of this year. So we're going to start collecting more data and analyzing it and then come up with a process around how we can enforce these particular noise complaints. So in many cases in the past, when you've called 311 and we say simply, well, we can't create a request on that category, that's no longer the case. Now, what we're going to communicate to the public are what these categories are going to be. So everyone will be aware of that. And part of the ask is also look at the knowledge base, because that'll also be updated too. But that information will be communicated. And we're working with our partners in MLS and Toronto Police Services to address this in a much more timely, meaningful way. We're going to have more sessions like this with all parties to talk about the policy, talk about the health implications, talk about the realistic expectations about how we can enforce these things. Because even if we're able to articulate and create a service request against this category, for record purposes right now, that's not good enough because we have to translate that to tangible actions. So we're taking a phased approach. What's also important in terms of knowledge base, there are 20 plus noise-related KB articles addressing noise concerns. And we review it annually, and we're probably going to make that faster or more, probably on a quarterly basis to make it more articulate and relevant. And we also want to make sure that we have our subject matter experts available to really relate to this information. And Ingrid, maybe you could help us with that information as well, because we want to get your perspective. It's really, really important. So part of this is really important in terms of going to a knowledge base. And we know we're not perfect. We understand that. But we know there's an opportunity to make things better and improve the degree of service that you actually should have and deserve. And the next slide, please. When to call 311 versus when to call the police. This is something that frustrates a lot of people. And we are working together on terms of when to call and making it more of a change management perspective and the communication strategy. But it's really important to make the right call at the right time to get the right service that you need. Knowing when to call 311, knowing when to call the police non-emergency number or when to call 911 will ensure that you get the right help at the right time. Calling 311 for information about the city's services and programs. Well, we know it's 7x24, 365. Information and refer requests to the appropriate city divisions for resident responses. Response time to all divisions will vary depending on the service request. Now, what's interesting is on the service, meeting that we had the other day, we talked about the dashboard, and there's a service catalog that was communicated in that dashboard. So that service catalog will have each. So I mentioned almost 600 service request types. For each one of those service request types, so almost 600 of them, the service levels will be there. And that will be public very soon. In terms of assistance, we know that we have language assistance in over 180 to 190 languages if you call. If you go online, you have 50 languages that you can translate through. Some service requests can be also made online, which is really important. You want to make sure it's effective and you have that record. Examples of city services requests include noise complaints, animal complaints, waste collection, road and sewer maintenance, and tree requests. When to call 911 for emergencies. They too are just 24/7, 365 a year. Calling emergencies. An emergency is a situation that requires immediate assistance. While I appreciate that noise, of a moving vehicle can be somewhat frustrating, that's not deemed right now from a policy perspective as immediate assistance or emergency or risk. When to call 416-808-2222 or file an online report for non-emergency police matters. The public can file many police-related reports, some which include property damage, driving complaints, parking complaints, noise complaints, especially local neighborhood traffic issues or concerns. What's really important, though, is we need to improve the handoff between the organizations. We're committed to working with Toronto Police Services on a better handoff policy. So, for example, if you've called 311, and we're going to initiate it towards the end of this year, so please be patient with us. But if you call 311 and there's an issue that we actually feel a note based upon the triage and policy that it should be a TPS issue, we're not simply going to ask you to get off this call and call TPS. We're going to do a warm transfer and walk you through that call with them. And if it means being on hold for a period of time, we'll work through that together, because that's a better service that everyone deserves. And I think that also helps provide a level of confidence and trust through this process and less confusion or frustration.
Mm-hmm.
Next slide, please. Not emergency work group activities we talked about. It's a partnership. So we are relaunching Make the Right Call campaign. And we're committing over $300,000 to this endeavor because it's important. In addition, addition of more service request type categories that we've talked about in terms of collecting data, looking at trends and nuances, and in turn creating policies and processes around enforcement. We're also reviewing with TPS the 301 websites to assist the streamlining of processes. You want to make sure that 301 is aware of what TPS's responsibilities are, and TPS is really aware of what 301 responsibilities are. So we're not, in turn, miscommunicating to the public what the expectations are. We all need to be on the same page. We'll continue to collect and distribute analysis of data between 301, MLS, and TPS to understand the trends and nuances, and also review information and processes, both internal and external websites, to make sure that they're consistent. We have this joint community engagement opportunities such as today, and we want to have more. So what's really exciting is that we have representation, not just from CXD, but we also have it from MLS and TPS on this call today. Mm-hmm. And we're not just exploring the warm transfer capability, we're committing to it. We'll do a pilot to see what that goes, and we'll love to share the data and the findings that come along with that. But we know that this is a better way to prove better service, not just looking at the cost or the fact that it's going to cost us a bit of time. Your time is equally as important. And we believe that providing this better level of service is what Torontonians deserve. Questions? Hopefully, that talks about our evolution and commitment around the service and the overall experience, and in particular to noise. It's something that's we know that there's a lot of passion around this, and we want to take a controlled, methodical approach to making it better.
Great. Thank you so much, Gary. I appreciate that. I'm going to see if I can add my pin to yours. Yes, there we go. Now we're both on screen here. Okay, so with that knowledge, now what everyone just heard, I am going to just do a little screen management over here, bring down Gary's presentation. And so now we're going to ask, what have been your challenges reporting noise? And so I'm going to share my screen. And so here's a little bit more for the baseline. What have been your challenges reporting noise and no immediate action? And I think that's where, for some things that will be difficult, like that moving vehicle. But if we have that warm transfer, then at least we can feel like there's been some action being taken. And you mentioned pictures, Gary. I think a lot of people would like to submit some pictures.
We do have to respect the legal aspects that come along with that.
Yeah.
And we want to work through it, but we don't want to say no
Yeah.
to that. We want to understand the legal implications, but depending on the nature of the pictures, absolutely, you have the right to do that right now. That's why we created that functionality within the client relationship management tool.
Excellent. Okay, well, I'm going to stop sharing now. And we had some questions in advance, and we also have some questions in the chat. So, Gary, did you want to address any of the questions that we had in advance, and kind of like because there was certainly some themes in there, or how would you like to handle that?
I don't have the list in front of me, but I remember some of them. So, for example, one was access to data and trends. So the good thing is with that dashboard that we're working through, about how that prototype by Q3 of this year, counselors will be able to see the end-to-end data on the delivery of those services. And we want to make it public going into 2025. So not only will that be public in 2025, when you go to 311, we're going to make sure that you can see, for example, how long you've been waiting on in queue, so on and so forth, number of service requests generated per day, and you'll also see the trends and nuances based upon the service request activity. So we want to be much more transparent with the data. And I have a feeling that you'll be able to see that in 2025 in a much more transparent way.
One of the things that when I tried to log a complaint for noise, for vehicle noise, I needed to put a pin on the map. And I couldn't the pin wanted to be where my home was, but I wanted to log it where the noise source was. And then once my request was closed, my pin went away. And that was one of the reasons why I built the Not 311 noise report, was so that people could go, oh, I'm not the only one who is, managing that. And you had a little map on your slides there. So will those pins persist once the case is closed? Is that something part of the data visualization that you're thinking of?
We want to try and see how that works, because we don't want to make it as confusing, because
Yes.
we're now looking at thousands and thousands of pins, but you'll probably be able to search them by service request category at that point in time, which will make it much more easy to navigate. So we do want to keep them up, absolutely. And through open data, that's also another source of accessing that information. But to your point, we want to make it visually appealing and accessible.
Excellent. I do have a question, and just for people that might be tuning in from outside of Toronto, what is the geographical boundary of 311 Toronto? Is that the city of Toronto? Is that?
Yeah, absolutely. But we do have relationships with other 301s, to Mississauga, to Durham, to Oakville, so on and so forth. But really, it's the GTA.
Yeah. Okay. Good. And so there's a little bit more. I'd like you to actually also clarify what the city's responsibility is between the vehicles. So moving vehicles, I think you were quite clear that it's Toronto Police Services that manages the moving vehicles. But the city manages stationary vehicles, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. And I know that Carlton provided a statement in the past around the completion rates that come along with that. And I know that there's also some concerns around the validity of that number. So I wouldn't necessarily put that number up, but the good thing is we do take it seriously. I understand that in some cases, it's a challenge when you have a policy, and then you also have to look at the ability to enforce against that policy,
Mhm.
and we have limited capacity. So the issue is also getting support if there's a need to increase that degree of enforcement. Then there needs to be budget allocation, resource allocation to make that happen through the budgetary process. So part of the conversation is also going back to counselors and reinforcing the importance of this. I'm looking at, what is a reasonable rate for enforcement and completion rates that's, within North America, and trying to meet that benchmark. And part of the work that we're doing together with Toronto Police Services and MLS are to look at those rates to make sure we're in line.
Yeah, and for anybody that wasn't aware of the latest development in the noise bylaw was that basically this year, for when they do noise blitzes in conjunction with Toronto Police Services, MLS and Toronto Police Services, they can now test motorcycles and vehicles at idle for 92 decibels, and then at any engine speed above idle for 96 decibels. So that is absolutely an improvement and a step in the right direction. And then we just need to make sure that that warm handoff that you're thinking of doing with Toronto Police Services, then there's also the right environment to land that handoff in, because that's one of the things that I have found problematic, is that I don't have all the information to report the noise source that I'm looking to report. For example, a license plate, because it's 3 a.m. in the morning and I just got woken up. Back to the data piece. So one of the things that I have been, and people have mentioned that that's also in the chat here, is being able to report noise sources even though they're allowed during the time. So whether it's waste collection noise, that's now allowed 24/7, or leaf blower noise that's allowed during the day. Do you see any way that we can actually start to accommodate collecting all of the data and then parsing out what is within the bylaw times, so that you actually have the full data set, that you can understand, are leaf blowers getting worse, or how bad is that waste collection noise at night?
I think it's a very fair question, and I don't necessarily see an issue with collecting information. What the issue becomes is the expectations around the enforcement of that. So as soon as someone has the ability to submit a complaint, a request, there's an expectation of an action that comes along with that. So there needs to be some patience and understanding on this is a phased approach. And that's why, meetings like today are really important to manage the expectations around what the process is today, what are the expectations along with those processes, and how can we evolve in incremental ways to make things better and define what better is. Because when you talk to 100 people, you might find 75 opinions around what is better, right? And we can only come to agreement on maybe 5. So that's a bit of the challenge that we have to work through together. But in terms of collecting the data, I'll definitely bring that up and work with the committee to see the feasibility of that and circle back with you for sure.
Well, I implemented Workday, and Salesforce is a similar, and that's the software that you're
Absolutely.
looking to implement, right? Like,
Yes.
what a great idea. I mean, it's a great customer resource management tool, and that is a way, and it's got flexibility in its workflows. You can configure specific workflows. So that's what actually got me really excited about this, because you are really bringing something that is, you're bringing outside thinking into the city in a sense.
Absolutely.
And I think that's great, because you were talking about best in class, that New York is looking at what you're doing, end-to-end tracking for customer complaints and all of that, which is what people are now expecting. We're expecting more out of the city. And so on that way, there's more people coming into the city. We're getting more dense, we're getting more loud, and more people are impacted by that one. I actually just recorded a garbage truck, and it was 108 decibels just above it, but there was thousands of people living around it. If there's a loud patio at 2 in the morning, many people, like, we're all getting more dense. And so there's a question in the chat about, because vehicle noise, as Toronto Public Health was saying, is that traffic noise is one of the most ubiquitous noise sources. So if we can manage to reduce traffic noise through complete streets and calming traffic, we will actually create a better Toronto in that way. And so I'm curious, do you see your data then that you're collecting? Because you literally are that front door that people walk through to connect with the city. How do you see your data? How do you see this data being used going forward?
Well, it's to inform policy, to understand trends and nuances, and also not only inform policy, but direct priorities and in turn budgets to make those things come to fruition.
Yeah. And you mentioned budgets before, and I wanted to say that, sometimes like I had a webinar on noise cameras in January, and those are the ones that New York City is buying, and the technology is there, but they're expensive. And there's other ways that we can be where municipal bylaw officers can't be and Toronto Police Services can't be. And that is with our evidence data gathering machine of our phone. And so that's where I'm looking towards the functionality that you think that we can bring in. Like what can we look forward to? Actually, before I ask that question, I'm going to hop over because I see that we're at 12:48 now. So I'm going to ask one more Mentimeter question. And so that means I'm going to share my screen and we're going to move forward. And I'm going to ask, what are some of your solutions to reporting noise? So regulation, noise cameras is coming right up in there. Action, accountability, yes. And I actually do see that this is where Gary is heading with this, that there is going to be some transparency and accountability with the city. Ticketing offenders, removing noisy vehicles. What else? Action, lots of little, there's quite a diverse cessation, demerit points. There's quite a diverse set of actions here, some solutions. Nice. And we're going to start wrapping up here. And I don't want to cut us short, but I do have one question that I like to end with. And that is, what would you like your city to sound like? Because I asked this once in a webinar or actually in an in-person event, and people actually were like, what? I don't know, because I'm so concentrated on what I don't want to hear. So I always like to encourage people to try and think about what they do want to hear. And so this is some of the examples here, but while we continue, I'm going to let that percolate for a little bit, let that cook, as they say, and I'm going to just stop sharing here again, and we can come back to those answers. But so in the sense of functionality, what is in our future, Gary? What can you give us hope for? Where do you see Toronto at your service going?
Yeah, really good question. And I think, using the devices, you have, like you said, your phone is one of the most powerful things that you have. And the issue is you have functionality right now in place to use it properly. We can actually issue complaints right now and use the data around complaints to understand where sensitivities are. So I would ask everyone to start using complaints and compliments, that feature and the feedback feature right now online, that's digital, to communicate your areas of concerns, because that allows us to use that data and understand what's really important, to use that data to drive certain behaviors or decisions. In terms of advocacy, I believe that you can use that phone right now and become an empowered from an advocacy perspective, but to the other issue around privacy. Now, while advocacy comes at a cost, in the sense that you have to also communicate who you are, because that validates some of the things that you're doing. So if you are concerned about, this noisy car, this noisy business, smoking in hallways, so on and so forth, we don't share that information with anyone. But we need to know the originator of that information, because in many cases in the past, neighbors love each other and don't love each other. And they use the system and tools against each other in very negative ways. So a neighbor can easily say that the other neighbor's car is noisy in an anonymous way, and really they weren't. And it becomes adversarial and becomes another area where you're using the city system against each other. So that's one of the reasons why we're asking you to trust us a little bit in regards to communicating who you are in terms of the originator or initiator of said request. But I think it's at your fingertips. And right now, you can use it today. And tomorrow, you'll even be more informed and more empowered with the increased functionality that's coming through the evolution of 311.
Awesome. Well, and maybe we can just make sure that I get the correct link with that. So everybody will be getting a thank you email from No More Noise Toronto, and we'll make sure to include some of the highlights that Gary has presented here. So I just need to, I'm just going to wrap up, and in case anybody needs to drop off, because I know we have meetings many of us have meetings at 1 o'clock. So I'm just going to finish off by sharing a couple little things about No More Noise Toronto, and then possibly open it up for, I do see someone here that wants to share, and I wouldn't mind having her come on, but let me just share my screen here. And so this is, so we're back to peaceful and birds chirping. That is what people would like to hear. And if we have roaring vehicles or amplified sound, or we haven't slept because of waste collection noise, then, or they've flown away because of fireworks, I think we need to make some changes. So just a couple things about No More Noise Toronto. We are a grassroots organization that is looking to create alliances and collaborate with the city and with resident groups to create equitable solutions for everyone. You can sign up for my newsletter, which is called Noise News right here. We are 100% donation driven. So if you are so kind to donate, that would be amazing. And then info sessions and events is where I have on Eventbrite. We have No More Noise Toronto meetups. And we are actually having one on Thursday. So for anybody who wasn't able to attend today, they will be able to kind of do a catch up. I'm going to play Gary's presentation and hopefully answer some questions as good as I can, and also share the Menti as well. And so then you can follow us on a variety of different social media channels. But each one of these is a little bit of a story about noise in Toronto and what we're looking to do to change that. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing. And Gary, I just want to stop by at 12:54 here. So thank you so much for when I walked up to you, and I was nervous as heck. I got to be honest, because I just landed a whole bunch of emails in your inbox. But what we've done at No More Noise Toronto is we've gotten your attention. And I think through our method and our style of gaining attention, but also wanting to work with the city, work with MLS, because we have to start somewhere. And if we're not starting together, then we're not going to go anywhere. So I want to really thank you for this opportunity and this time, and offer you some closing thoughts if you'd like to share.
Ingrid, first of all, I really appreciate you taking the first step in reaching out. And it wasn't a bad conversation at all. No. And I'm hoping for much more, or many more. And the city wants to make it a better place. And we have family, friends, and loved ones that live here as well. So all I'm asking for is to work with us, communicate, use your voice, be somewhat patient because it takes time. Change does take time.
Yes.
But we're working together, not in isolation. It's not an MLS versus a 311 CXD versus a TPS conversation. We're in this together, and we do what's the best for our residents. I really want to thank you again for the opportunity just to share perspectives and thoughts. Please use complaints and compliments to continue to vocalize your concerns. That also empowers us at the committee level, and use this data to show that many people are upset in these things, and they actually have very valuable thoughts and insights, and also facilitates the ability to have more conversations like we are today. So thank you.
Thank you. And we have 5 minutes left. So I just wanted to, Arlene Bronzaft is on the line. And Arlene Bronzaft is someone from New York City. She's been an advocate for noise reduction for decades. And she is a mentor of mine, and she gives me lots of very good wisdom, and she has requested to speak. So I just like to invite Arlene. Are you, I unmute.
Do you hear me? Am I unmuted?
Yes, you are. Yes. Go ahead.
Gary, thank you very much. It was a pleasure. And let me add, I have ties to Toronto. My mother was from Toronto, and I did live there as a child, and most of my relatives are there, but born and bred in New York City. And let me tell you, I've been very actively involved in noise, having conducted groundbreaking research on the effects of transit noise on children's learning when a school was next to the train. And that started me on the path of noise. I also have an appointment in New York City, appointed by 6 mayors to Grow NYC, where I oversee noise activities, non-paid. And I did get involved in the updating of the noise code when it was updated in 2007. Needs another one now. But my question to you, because we're dealing with 311, is that I would urge you to look at the State Controller DiNapoli's report, I believe it was 2019, in which he analyzed all the 311 calls that were made to New York City. And basically, and I did work with him and his committee. Basically, what DiNapoli reported is that most of them led nowhere. And that was with data, because he looked, and I'm a data-oriented person. I'm an environmental psychologist and a professor of psychology. It turned out that 311 really essentially did nothing to help the people resolving noise complaints. And they're not, the police are a separate entity. I'm just talking about New York City. DEP, Department of Environmental Protection, has its own agents. And that was a sad commentary that 311, based on data, did not resolve complaints for the most part. There was a positive note to that. In response to that, the city did hire extra agents so that there could be a more effective response. So what I wanted to know from you, you have data. You have data of the 311 calls. May I inquire? Yes?
Yeah, absolutely.
And you know what types of complaints were made. And I've been reading some of the responses on the chat page. Do you have any data that would show whether these complaints were resolved satisfactorily in terms of the individual who made the complaint? Or is that what you're planning to do? I would like to see data. When the parents, you see, when parents said the children were not learning in that classroom, it was obvious. If you walked in there, it was noisy. But I had to demonstrate that the noise caused children by the 6th grade to be nearly a year behind in reading compared to children on the quiet side. And we, by the way, we remedy the problem. So I would like to work with you because as I said, I'm a data person. Remember the movie, Show Me the Money? I say, show me the data. Do you have data on types of complaints, what responses were made to those complaints, and whether or not they were resolved in some satisfactory fashion? Thank you.
So, no problem. And the first question, or my response is absolutely, we have the data. Right now, we have the data per those 600 categories, which includes noise complaints, which are fully integrated into 311. What's also important is that 311 is the intaker of those issues. In regards to noise complaints, MLS would be the resolver, an investigator of those particular incidents. So I couldn't, I don't think it's a fair statement to state that 311 is not doing anything, because 311's responsibility in this case, because it's an end-to-end relationship. So you have the front end, which is 311, the back end in this case, which is MLS. And we need that partnership to drive the overall level of accountability and transparency. But as it stands today, yes, we have that information. Yes, we have it per those categories. And we're working with council right now to create a dashboard in which that becomes available to members of council by the end of this year and to members of public in 2025.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And I recognize we're at 1:01, and I've got one more question for you, Gary, and that is, where do people complain about the air show? There's a lot of questions. There's a lot of people in the chat that are talking about the air show. So how do we start tackling that big, loud beast?
Well, the first thing you could do is we have complaints and compliments. So if that category is not there within noise complaints, and it needs to be there, perfect avenues to use complaints and compliments to build that category if it's required. So I would say you could use the 301 group, but if it's not there as a category, that's not a problem. But it is the complaints and compliments and a need for us to address it.
Excellent. Okay. So we've got a bunch more things happening in the chat. Everybody who's putting things in the chat, we are at 101, and I'm not sure what Gary's commitments are after this. So I think we should stop the recording probably, but all the information from the Mentimeter and the chat will be shared with Gary and his staff. So at this point, Gary, what do you have some extra minutes? Do you want to answer?
Yeah, absolutely. No, absolutely. I have a couple of minutes for sure.
Okay.
I may not have all the answers, but I at least have the minutes. Yeah.
Fair. So there's a question here. Could the main problem be that there is no formal noise mitigation standard of procedures? We need to create best practices for city to follow to enforce noisemakers. So I think that's more of an MLS.
And that's something we can take back to MLS to get some perspective on.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. So that was the air show. What about, so here's somebody asking about, what about having a day or evening of no noise? Like imagine if Sundays were just, that the city could just kind of say, hey, let's be quiet on Sunday. And that's not a 311 thing, but then if anybody is making noise, then that would be a report to you.
Absolutely. But I also find it interesting, the TTC is looking at a noise policy within the trains and their environments and facilities. So to your point, there's some openness to that. And that's a really good campaign to go against, because I think quietness or hearing the birds chirp and not hearing the noises. And I know we're social people, but no one likes to be yelled at or hearing yelling or aggressive language or someone crying. There are a lot of things that affect us in many negative ways.
Absolutely. So there's a question here regarding leaf blowers. Has MLS 311 changed its policy of not reporting leaf blowers noise during the day, as there is not a prohibiting bylaw?
We, as per the conversation today, we haven't changed the policy, but I will work with Carlton and team to look at the importance of at least being able to report it, to understand the issues or the severity of those issues.
I would really like to make the not 311 noise report redundant because that's why it was started, was so that people could have a place to at least say, I was able to say something. And when you are impacted by noise and then you have that frustration of trying to log a complaint with the people you're supposed to log a complaint to, and they say, sorry, you can't, that doesn't help. So I thank you for being open to that. I think that from a process workflow should be fairly doable. But then also, like you said, there is that expectation. And when you give people an inch, sometimes they take a mile. And so education is so important. And that's where many people, I talk to them about noise. And then I say, oh, do you hear that motorbike? And then they're like, Ingrid, since I talked with you, I cannot hear a motorbike without thinking about you, like it's about that sensitization. And it's also about, and back to my land acknowledgement was about, let's take the earbuds out. Let's try and hear what is our soundscape and become in touch with it, because our bodies are feeling it regardless. There's health impacts, and I noticed that Dr. Tor Oyama was on the call, and he is an expert on urban noise and traffic noise, and there's decades of research now done on the health impacts of noise. And anybody who says, oh, we'll get over it, you'll get used to it, the answer is no, we don't get over it, and no, we don't get used to it. So there's my little rant. Okay, love the idea of quiet days. And so then there was just a couple exchanges between people on there, but I think we can call it here. So with that, I will thank the 37 attendees that are still online with us now. We got up to over 55. So that was an excellent attendance rate, and this will be posted on my YouTube channel. I am going to be doing a follow-up on Thursday. If you want to come out on at 7 o'clock, you can go onto my Eventbrite channel, Creating Better Cities by Reducing Noise, and sign up. But finally, I am just really grateful for everyone who's come on the call today. If I didn't have people behind me, I would just be a loud, annoying, angry woman. And I'm not. I have people behind me, which makes me happy, which gives me purpose, and we're going to make change together. So with that, I will say thank you to everyone, and I will stop recording and end the webinar. So first we'll start with stopping recording. Yes.